Just normal, regular.
My
No, that's not regular. That's not regular.
Created.
Can you say my life creative?
My life creative.
Hello and welcome to My Life Creative. I'm Richard Zombek and I'm here with Pamela Joy.
Hi there, Richard.
And this is a podcast about creativity, the ups and downs and troubles and struggles and everything that goes into creativity. I want to remind everyone that you can find us at mylifecreative.com, where you can follow us on Facebook, find out a little bit more about our backgrounds, as well as the people who we are interviewing on the blog in episodes, shows, and also find out how to support us by, once again, going to mylifecreative.com. You click on support, and you'll find the myriad of ways that you can support us. Today's interview is with Maryanne Gobble. And Pamela, why don't you tell us a little bit about her?
I would love to. Maryanne is a fine art photographer who I've been interested in speaking with her. On one hand, because in getting to know her a little bit, she does a lot of work with self-portraiture, and in just communicating with her back and forth a little bit, her environment really affects her. And I relate a lot to that. And she recently relocated for a bit from Oregon, where she grew up, and that's her home, to Colorado. And she's had a difficult, I won't say difficult, it's been their period of transition. And she's had a hard time trying to integrate what she did in Oregon with her self-portraiture in Colorado. And so we talked a lot about environment and moving or change and transition and how that affects creativity, process making things, whatever. And from there, we also talked a bit about her different series that she has going on. And she shared some pretty deep things about her husband and his involvement in her work. And just how her day-to-day goes, what she's gotten into in the meantime. I have a lot of appreciation that she expands herself, like she sets some clear goals and some boundaries and different things. So anyway, I don't want to give too much of it away. I did want to note that the audio quality isn't the best, and we talked about that, and we also gave Maryanne a chance to listen to it, and she was okay with it, as was I. The content is really good. The conversation was really good, and I think collectively we felt that it was more important just to run it as is and get past the perfection of the audio and let people hear just the conversation and what she had to say.
Yeah, and the content itself is well worth suffering through the quality of the audio. So let's listen to that interview.
Okay.
My life creative.
As we've talked a little bit, I know what that's like to feel on your face on the floor, uninspired, and like, I've got to go do this. And then the mental mess that happens in my head anyway, as a fallout of that. See, you're not really an artist. You're really not creative. Yeah. You really.
And what if you're never creative again?
It's never going to happen. You were just lucky. You just went through a little lucky patch. It's all done now. Yeah. And and then I get so angry, because I'll like start to read, it's almost like the universe opens the floodgates of messages to just be creative. You need to keep at it. You need to do it when you don't. Yeah. And you just, I just want to put my fist through a wall.
Sometimes I want to be like, you're lying. You're totally lying.
Yeah. So I never thought that this happened to other people. I just thought I've been this on my own little iceberg swimming along.
No.
And I just started to think, maybe I'm not the only one. I can't be that unique, right? Maybe other people think like this or go through. So that was really what I went to visit Amanda last year when I was down in Florida seeing my father. And I think on the way back and on the way up, because it was like a 5-hour ride, I did a lot of thinking about what can I do rather than what can't I do, and what interests me and so, just this stupid little game of so what do you like to do? I'm like, well, I like to talk. I like to talk with people. And that led to, what would it be fun to talk with people about? And I'm like, all this insanity that goes on in my head.
No, for real though.
So that is really the genesis for how this was born. I came home and I talked with my husband about it, and he said, that's a really good, he got more excited about it than I was. Then I tried to find everything why I shouldn't do it. And it's been many, many months of just trying. So we're very close now to being able to actually publish, because I've needed 5 people. And I really wanted to start with people that I feel I know from the online world. And your work always strikes me. I mean, right out of the gate when I saw it, I'm like, oh my God. I was one of your...
What a nutcase.
No, I didn't think that at all. I was like, who is this person? And then as I've gotten to know you and all that you share with people, you have an innate ability to, I don't know. I know you don't always think that. So that's why I wanted to talk with you.
I have no filter is really what's going on.
Well, I think I wanted to really, if you're open to it, start with kind of when I first reached out to you and you, because I've known a little bit from your posts and different things that you've shared that it's been tough. And so in framing that, it's more that you grew up on the Oregon coast. That's sort of where your heart lives. And you've had to move because your husband is a pilot. And you've had to go kind of where the jobs were and where he could get more training time and flying time, et cetera, et cetera. So you have found yourself in very different environments, coupled with other components. So I just wondered if you would maybe talk about that before and then now, and kind of the contrast that goes in your head.
Well, actually, Oregon, it's a wonderland where I grew up, but I didn't realize that at the time. And so the thought of moving different places was really fantastic and exciting sounding. And as we've moved around, I found that my heart really is in the Pacific Northwest. And I don't want to idealize one place, but it's been different to adjust to what different places are. And I've enjoyed different places for their uniqueness. But Colorado has been something else entirely because I believe it's the altitude that affected me. So as soon as we moved here, I was completely a different person. It was like all my feeling vacated me. And there is an altitude adjustment here for a lot of people, whether it be a few days or a few weeks or a few months. And so at first I was like, well, I'll just wait that out. In a few weeks I'll feel better. And then it was a few months. And then it was like, oh my goodness, should we move? Like, are you broken? Like, I wasn't even functioning here. And that really got me thinking about how place affects people and how important it maybe is what the balance is between being satisfied where you live and how much effort you should put into actually choosing where you live if you have that possibility in your life.
I identify with that. Because I feel like I'm a very visual. To this day, there is one place in all the places I've lived that I was very pleased and inspired by my surroundings.
Do you feel different there?
Completely.
I've actually been told when we've gone back to visit Oregon that I'm a different person there. We'll go back. My husband's just like, you're different here. You're a different person. You act different. You are different. Which is sort of disturbing for me to hear because I want to think I'm the same person no matter where I live.
Well, I wonder if there's, I don't know. I've always wanted to be that person who thrives in, like, I have an idyllic vision of the people that I know who do nothing but travel around the world. And they find themselves in different exotic places all the time by choice. They live a certain way to tailor or to allow that. They do without a lot of things that most people work for. But many of them are photographers. And I don't know that I could adapt quickly like that. I've moved a lot in my life, but I don't know how to say that there were definitely, and I lived in Seattle for 10 years, and there is something very magnificent. And I didn't photograph the entire time I was there. I was kind of caught up into, I had a really good time. Bands, music, partying, There was a lot, it was fun, but I did not make anything when I was there. I looked at the beauty around me. I appreciated it all the time, but I did nothing with it. And I had a very similar adjustment in coming here. It was hard. It was hard for a really long time. The seasons, the change. I don't really get I don't see a lot of beauty in winter. It just looks like everything's barren and gray and dead. There's no green. I don't know. It's taken a while to feel more comfortable here. And interestingly, this is where I reconnected with photography. So it's like a love-hate weird thing that goes on, and it's all concocted in my head. But I have been, like when I go down to Florida in the middle of the winter, I am so charged up. I photograph all day. Like naturally, I see things, the light, the shadows, I play, I have fun. It's interesting to me. Or the beach when I go down to the shore in South Jersey. So I have wondered if trips are different from life, right? When you take a vacation, like hotels always just charge me up. I love them. My other side of work, events, I've gotten to stay in a lot of hotels over the years, and depending on the program, I could live there for a month and just tote around and photograph. There's something freeing about it. And then I come home and I'm trapped by all the things, So anyway, going back to this whole sense of place, I agree with you. I think that there are some people that environment really profoundly affects them, and there are other people who aren't.
Yes, and you mentioned seasons too, and that's something I'm trying to get better about. Knowing what seasons make me come alive and knowing those seasons will come back around. So the seasons where I completely just fall flat, being realistic about this is only a few months, and down the road, fall and winter will come back, and trying to time off-season activities and creativity for when I know I'm not going to be inspired. And so that's a balance I'm starting to aim for. Like here, summer, I just hate summer in Colorado. Hate it. It's a blue sky every day. It's sterile. It's blank. It's hot. I hate it. And so I'm already preparing myself for next summer, like to not be caught by surprise. If I feel a little depressed about it, that's fine because it's just the summer. It's going to go by and then I'll have my other season, and just trying to go with the flow of it and expect it, and know that there are seasons every year to do different things in.
That's a good, I've not landed on that for the winter. I tried the trees. I tried just going with bare trees and trying to do different things with them. And then I lost what more can I do? I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to be outfitted better, like LL Bean gear, what is it called?
Oh, huge
active wear, something that you can be outside and be warm and dry and comfortable and not feel like you have a million clothes on. It's been sort of a different investment into clothing that works for the environment and the different kinds of things I like to do. But when it's cold and snowy, I can't seem to get myself, let's go. Unless it's snowing or there's some kind of fog or some kind. I've looked at different times of day. So I've done similar things to what you've done with the season of what can I do with it rather than this blows.
And knowing that it won't last forever, that there is something to look forward to. And in the seasons that I don't like, I try to make little things to look forward to, even if they're not creative things.
So what kind of things?
Oh, let's see. Here we have a pool. of a goal person, but I try to be like, okay, my kids are going to have fun. And like, these are the weeks I'm going to put into my kids, and we're going to do things they like. In off-season seasons, I've done a lot of reading or even movies. I mean, movies are a great go-to when you have no energy to do anything. And I've really learned to appreciate the importance of movies, actually. I used to think it was kind of a flaky thing, like it was beneath me in creativity, like it was a brainless thing to do. But there is so much that people pour into creating these stories, and I think there's actually a lot to glean from them. And so if I have nothing to give, sometimes I just appreciate what other people have made, and movies has been one of the ways I've done that.
That's a beautiful way to think about it.
And I couldn't see it until recently when I really was at my bottom. But stories are a beautiful thing. I'm a very analytical person, and even when I read books, it's, nonfiction and facts. And this year I've really pushed myself to consume fiction in books and in movies and appreciate the underlying messages.
What kind of movies do you watch?
Oh, I like anything. I love things that have a sense of place. Trees, fog. I love the Harry Potter movies, actually. Those are great.
Yes,
it's
they
October.
are.
They're great series to watch right now. Jane Eyre, I really loved the cinematography in that. I think I kind of stick to more serious movies and things that just have a great sense of place. The Tree of Life, that's a great one for visual people.
Ooh, to note that.
Have you seen
No, I don't.
Oh, he films beautifully. And he films in all natural light. Oh, The Revenant. That was filmed all natural light, and it was incredible to watch.
I don't watch that.
Have you seen that with Leonardo DiCaprio?
I did not watch that. I think the the blockbuster films, even if they win awards, I can't deal with violence anymore, or really intense scenes. I can't do it. I can't watch Game of Thrones, the Vikings. I don't get it. I like very beautiful layered visual indie films.
You'll love The Tree of Life.
Yeah, that sounds like what was the one that they followed the boy over 12 years, 18 years, something like that. The film, remember the documentary that came out couple years ago? It won a lot of awards. Patricia Arquette was in it. I think it was Patricia Arquette. They followed a boy when he was. They followed all the characters when they were.
I know what you're talking about, but I never got around to watching that. It was on my
That was spectacular. That's my kind of film.
Oh, I'm writing this down now.
So you don't do any bad TV shows or any. I have a.
I didn't even have TV. We just got Netflix a few months ago, and I haven't really watched anything on it. I watched Stranger Things. It was kind of my thing. I watched. There's nothing. It's just fun to watch. There's nothing groundbreaking about it, but I did watch that. But I've never gotten into really any series or anything.
Downton Abbey. That actually is one to watch. Yes, the cinematography in that film and the story and when I think of the detail and the research that went into it, mind blowing. But the light, you would appreciate it because it's all filmed in England, and England has the same. I think they're on the same latitude line as the Pacific Northwest, so you see a very similar kind of atmosphere and lighting. Yeah, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Costumes, the stories, the time, imagining. Oh my gosh, it's interesting. But well, in all of this, you also started printing.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk with you about that a little bit, because I'm equally obsessed with your still lifes that you just started playing with around the house, like your food still lifes. You naturally have this ability to lay things out, and with no training, they looked very polished. I mean, they were.
Thank you, because I'm really insecure about those.
Oh, I thought they were fantastic. They look the same. They're the same quality that you see in any of the magazines, Real Food, Martha, etc., any of the rustic farm to table, it had that quality to it.
And that's something I plan on working on, the still lifes, throughout the winter, because I can't get away outdoors as often here in Colorado because of the driving distance. And so that is one of my projects I work on that I can do without leaving my house. So I'm still here when my kids get off of school. And I'm able to put that stuff into stock photography, so it's not a waste of my time.
So how do you put those together? I mean, do you go like to a thrift store and pick out a bunch of things, or do you have an idea? I'd love to know your whole process with it.
That's exactly what I do. In fact, I'm going to the thrift store today. I go to the thrift store and they have so many great kitchen things, and sometimes I'll just find a piece and be like, all right, what can I put on this platter? And I love produce. I eat mostly vegetarian. I love the colors of vegetables and the textures, and I'll go to the store and pick up some squash or something and just start taking it apart and thinking how I can set it and how it can catch the light and catch its textures and colors. But I don't really have a process necessarily. I just poke stuff around until I can get something out of it.
Well, they're wonderful. I think there was one where you had kind of scattered flour on a table, or I can't remember now. It was last year, I think, around the holidays. You had done a couple different things, and the lighting was beautiful. Whatever table you were on, it was really like a dark wood, and the way you had sprinkled the flour or whatever it was, like grains, everything just color-wise, it was all the right. They were all the right tones, and everything showed up the right way. It was.
Me too, because I always feel like I have awful backgrounds, and I'm always looking for some kind of dark wood or something. That was probably my cutting board I used. And you imagine these other photographers to have these fabulous kitchens or something, but I think very few people actually do. I think they're all doing the same thing I do, trying to find scrap wood or something.
I think so. I think what would be interesting is to do they would never reveal their little tips and tricks, but I bet if you panned out and saw what they were working on I don't think it's, granted, yes, I'm sure that for Martha it's all well, I'm kind of looking back at my reference here of some things of I'd like to go back to when you grew up in Oregon and when you started to photograph, how that evolved, kind of start going back to the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I used to just hike. I didn't hang out with a lot of people growing up. It's a very small town, and I grew up around a lot of boys, and they never wanted to include girls in their boy stuff. So I do a lot of hiking by myself. And at one point, I just put a point-and-shoot camera in my backpack. And everywhere there is beautiful. There's just sunsets and redwoods and just beautiful everywhere. And so I take out my camera and take pictures. And people started asking to buy the prints. I'd go develop them at a 1-hour place, and the people working there would ask to purchase them. And so it got me thinking that maybe it was something I could do more often and maybe refine a little bit. And so it was all landscapes in the beginning. There were no people in it. And I started to put some stuff in a local bookstore. I sold landscape cards, and then I did a gallery for a while. I had some stuff up in there. But I grew bored with it fairly fast. I just did not find landscapes really exciting because I was always surrounded like that. So it was nothing new to me. And then I started doing some weddings, and I started doing some portraiture, which I liked okay, but it still wasn't my thing either. And it wasn't until I started putting all that away and doing personal work where I could merge people and nature that I really started enjoying what I was doing. Mm. And it was hard to find because people ask, what do you do? And I never know how to explain. I'm like fine art photographer, but that sounds so generic. And I have a hard time explaining to people what kind of photography I do and why I do it, because it doesn't have a clear sense of purpose as if you're doing family portraiture or something. It's very easy to explain. You have a customer, you get paid for it, it's a service. It's a little bit harder to explain why I would do personal work and why that's important. But my family, my immediate family, is very important to them. And So I have a really free place to create from.
That's interesting because I get a very clear vision in your work of celebrating and almost longing a need to be in nature and to show almost a reverence back to it. Like I see a lot of gratitude, a lot of, some of them feel almost have like a mourning kind of sad that I've always equated with what we're doing to our planet. And will these things still be here? Will they still look like this? It may not be anywhere in your psyche, that might have nothing to do with your intention, but that's what it reminds me of for me. When I see some of these things, they're so beautiful that I hope with all my heart that still is there in 50 years, 100 years.
Yes, and it's interesting you say that because the last few years going back to Oregon, I do have a little bit of mourning because there's that Cascadia fault line that goes, out in the ocean there. And in all reality, in the next 100 years, there could be a very large tsunami there that will change what the coastline looks like. And so I'm always aware, like, if I come back here again, this may not look like this. Which is a very strange thing to think about.
I'm trying to think of the photographer. I think it's Robert Morris. No. I went to see an exhibit at Yale a couple, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. A photographer dealt with place, black and white film, and really documented the West Coast and as it was expanding in the 60s, 70s, and on up. You started with the beginning work on the first floor, and the second floor they took you up to, they continue on with the work. I think he's in Oregon as well.
Really?
I will look up his name and let you know. I cannot think of it. It is called the Getting Older. My brain doesn't work as well. I can see his work. I'm going to tell you, by the end of it, I cried. He had this massive portrait of a clear-cut forest and a family with the picnic basket. And his whole point was, what family goes to have a picnic in a clear-cut forest? You don't, yes. Because it's the saddest, most horrible thing you've ever seen. And
in the forestry there was no regard for anything. I actually come from a family of loggers. And I have uncles who were able to tell me there were just these giants of trees that existed that you don't see anymore when you go into the forest. They're just not there. And that they were just cut down everywhere. And I think he said they even shipped them off overseas somewhere. But there are people who are alive now that know that landscape is completely different as what it is today.
Yeah, I think it's Robert Morris. I will send it to you because he has another picture in Hollywood and it's called The Last Tree on Hollywood. And you had seen the pictures before that showed you what this cliff looked like. And then you see this scrawled, really sad, near-death tree just hanging on, surrounded by all these homes. So I've always been struck by exactly what you're saying. Work that looks at either people or places and deals with them over time. Nicholas Nixon is still, by and large, one of the most. His Brown series, the Brown Sister series, had such an impact on me in terms of seeing portraits. Since 1972, he's still making them of his wife and his sisters, and just how photography really, over a long period of time, has an impact like nothing else. It's beyond words. It's beyond video. Or the 7-Up documentary where they followed the kids. They're still following them. They've been following them since they were 6 years old. I think most of them are in their 60s now. So I've never thought of that with what you just said, that these places, the stacks on the coastline, even the redwood forest, all that could really change if the ground shook hard enough.
Oh yeah. It's bizarre to think about. It doesn't even seem realistically possible, but scientific data would prove otherwise. It's a strange thing to think about.
So when did you start putting yourself into the pictures? How did that come about?
That came about, a lot of it was because I felt like you could not see a landscape with perspective unless there was a person next to it. You just couldn't see the magnitude of it. And I think putting a person in the landscape makes it interesting to see the interaction between the two, or the equality between the two. And when it came down to it, the kind of pictures I wanted to take can be a real pain in the butt to go take. Nobody wants to wake up at 5 a.m. and hike 3 miles in 30-degree weather to have their picture taken. And so it's convenient that it's me. Like, I don't need to bring anyone along. I don't have to follow anyone's schedule. I can find this couple hours that works for me, pack up my stuff, go out and take a picture, and I'm available. So that was a large part of it. It was convenient. I didn't have to ask something unreasonable about somebody else. And also, I am so connected to the natural world that it's a very natural environment to insert myself into. It's something I enjoy. These are places that I feel joy. And so it just was a natural evolution that made sense for my photography.
Well, you make it look so easy, and I have a feeling it is so not easy. I don't even know how I would even approach it. Obviously you tripod and it's remote. Are you triggering it? How do you set all this up? I mean,
I finally found a trigger that goes longer than 10 feet, because that was a real pain in the beginning. I don't know how many feet I can go away, and I trigger it, and I either toss it on the ground, or I stick it in my pocket, or I put my hand behind my back. There's these triggers that have like an antenna on it, and so it can reach your camera. If it's a really difficult situation, or if I'm going to be wet and can't have a trigger in my hand, I will have someone else trigger the camera for me. I will give them a signal, and it will be on a 2-second delay. So I signal them with my hand, they press my trigger, and then I move really fast into how I want to be. And so that is a much more reasonable way to do it in a lot of situations where I can't have the trigger in the picture.
I'm blown away. That one, I don't know what the title of it is, but you're running. It feels very Cartier-Bresson. It's like, or this, it's surreal. Is it on the beach?
That I was actually by myself, and I did trigger that myself. No one wanted to go to the beach with me. That's dawn. Oh, it was amazing. There was like a sea otter that crawled out of the ocean. Fog everywhere. I only saw one person on the beach that day.
Wow.
It's just absolute wilderness, and it was magnificent. And the tide was coming in and out, and I set it up, and I think I took a few shots before that one turned out. But I did have a trigger. I'd trigger it, and then I'd run.
Yeah, it's spectacular. I mean, the work that goes into, because you're there, the camera's a ways away, so each time is a nice long run up to look at it and adjust, and then a run back, and you do it again. I'm sure practice makes perfect. You get a better sense of things, but they're so, you're like that. You're all in dark in this situation is perfect. Then the series where you did yourself in a white dress in the forest. I mean, so you stand out, obviously. It's perfect.
Yeah, and the white dress was for that reason, because the forests are so dark. I found that unless you were completely nude, you could not see any detail. And when I'm by myself, that is one of the rules I have. I won't do any nude photography if it's just me, for safety reasons. And so the white dress solved that problem. It's neutral enough, and it pops out of the forest, and it still shows a basic form of a person.
Oh, yeah. Well, that actually segues into a little bit of this with your nudes. I'm happy to hear that you don't just wander out. That there's an element of safety around all of this, particularly because your work is published and publicized, and there are creepy stalker people out there.
Oh yeah.
So when you do things that are more vulnerable, nudes, whatever, you're with people. You're not by yourself.
Exactly. And I also make sure, nude or not, like if I'm going out somewhere by myself, I don't advertise it all over the internet where I'm going to go right before I go. And it's sometimes I have to catch myself, like, oh, heading out, take a picture here. But I'm like, I can't say that. I mean, there are creepy stuff. In fact, in Oregon, there was a stalker issue. It actually went to court.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't necessarily targeted towards me. It was targeted more towards my mother, but that's where I was visiting. And I had to testify in a court trial against a stalker who was taking video and stuff. And so there was a very specific stalker that I knew of, one person specifically. I would not want them to know where I was when I'm photographing in Oregon. And social media, anyone can get on there and read. And so I have tried to be more cautious about how I go about things, as to not put myself in situations that shouldn't be.
Well, that's smart. It's almost like you should never hike alone. You should never, and if you're going to, let people know where you're going. And I think it's easier today with cell phones somewhat. Some places don't have the cell coverage inside of them, but...
Yeah, I did have a situation in Oregon also where I was hiking alone and everyone knew where I was, but I got attacked by bees.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't know if I was allergic or not because I've never been attacked by bees. And I was running up the trail on my cell phone trying to let people know this is a trail on. I'm getting attacked by bees. If you don't see me like in 20 minutes, come get me.
Wow.
And so even things like that, aside from people, animals, if you were attacked by something, you would want someone to know the general location you were at. And so even like when I lived in St. Louis, if my husband was working, I would text him at work and be like, hey, this is the place I'm going, just so you know, if I don't show up and the kids wonder where I'm at. And that's always been a precaution of mine, to always let someone know where I'm at.
That's, I sometimes am, I don't know how Cheryl Strayed was able to do what she did and survive. That she walked that whole thing by herself sometimes. It just blows my mind.
I'm not that brave.
I don't know that I am either. I know that I could. I don't know that I've done very brave things in my own way in my own life. I've done things that people have said I could never have done that. But to just venture off into the wilderness, I more think of animals and, things that eat you.
Yeah.
Creepy, weird people that are also out there because...
Well, you have to follow your intuition. There have been places I have gone and I have got up and left.
Really?
There have been people that have made me uncomfortable. I've, driven up to a parking lot on a hiking trail and sat there for a minute and been like, no, you're not getting out of your car. You need to go photograph somewhere else. And that has happened several times to me.
That's wonderful that you have that instinct. Because it...
Yeah, and it's really important to follow your intuition. I think whether you know why your intuition says it, just follow it.
So taking that and leading back into your work, was your husband a part of you photographing him initially, or did you find your way into doing that?
He had, at one point, when I was still doing portraits and stuff, I wasn't really enjoying myself doing regular portraits. And he finally sat me down and was like, what would you photograph if you could photograph anything? And no one had ever asked that of me, ever. Like, nothing even close. Everyone just assumed they knew what I wanted. And I thought, well, like anything? And he's like, yeah, even, if you could have any model in the world, any situation, what would you photograph? As I started to tell him different photos, some of them were, I really wanted to do a nude series that showed sort of a journey of sorts. And I was very interested in shooting men because I think men are underrepresented in art in that way. And so he knew the general of what I would photograph if I could photograph anything. And then there was one night we were out, we lived in Texas at the time, and we were in a cypress swamp at night waiting for a lunar eclipse. It was really kind of creepy and magical. And there was this very large cypress tree with a big hole in it. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was somebody curled up nude in that, and their body and their form was curled up kind of like a womb-like in there? And he was like, well, I'll do it. And he's very self-conscious. So I was like, what? And he was so supportive of me being able to realize the vision I have, that he was willing to offer himself, if that's what it meant. And that's where that started. And it eventually started going into a series and having more reason for why I shot that series and what that meant to him being photographed and what it meant to me as a photographer. And it's just been going ever since.
They're beautiful. The one where he's kind of trying to pull himself out of all the, I don't know if it's, yeah, I mean.
Eelgrass, maybe? I tried to look up and figure out what it was. I think it's eelgrass.
Absolutely. I relate to it on so many levels. The struggle, the perseverance, when it looks like everything is kind of going to grab you and take you down, you crawl out, you find the strength. It's incredible. It's an incredible moment in that picture.
And we really wanted to make some pictures that showed that tension of struggle in life, and for it to eventually end in lighter pictures that were more beautiful and victorious in a way. And in that series, it was really important because he's a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and it was really important to have the human body vulnerable and treated with dignity and show it intertwined with this landscape and what it looks like yourself in the larger world. And so there was just so much of our childhoods and so much of our present that went into our ideas of making the series and why those elements were important to be present.
What a brave man.
Oh, it couldn't have been the same series with anybody else. He's brought so much to it. It's been really interesting to know him as a person in that way. Parts of him I wouldn't have known just doing other activities. We've really enjoyed photographing it together.
Well, when you first started, did he have ideas or were they mostly your ideas? And then has that changed as you've gone along now? Like, does he ever, because he's part of it, right? He's not a subject. He's an active creator.
And I told him, I'm like, I hate that word subject. I use it sometimes and then I'm like, you're not a subject, you're a person. And that's a great question. In the beginning, they were all my ideas, and I would run them by him. Like, what do you think of this? Are you willing to do this? I tend to be more expressive. I tend to talk more. And so I'd be the one being like, hey, you want to do this? And now he started being like, look at that rock formation. Like, what do you think of that?
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And so it's,
has it helped him at all in terms of, that's heavy stuff. The emotional.
Yeah, I've asked him about this. And just as far as body image and the feeling of wholeness, he says it's been this very positive thing to have your body treated so respectfully. And it's also outside of sexual context. Like it's just a very pure thing. And he's really enjoyed going to these places and creating something. Like you take all this in life that you bring along and then you create something beautiful out of it. And he's really enjoyed the experience. And
it looks like it would be very healing almost in a way.
Yes. And he's not a wordy person. And so it's really great to do this creative thing that doesn't take words. Like it just takes showing up and making something and being vulnerable and trusting that the other person's not going to take advantage of that. And it's very brave that he allows me to put these images out there. I always run them past him. Like, what do you think of this image? Like, when you look, like, are you okay with this going out to the world? Because I'm terrified.
Oh, it's so generous.
Of putting something out there that would, offend him.
No.
And so we're very open between us about how we both feel about it. If we ever need breaks, sometimes he just doesn't feel up to taking pictures like that, and so we'll take breaks from it, and we both have to be equally invested in it to be producing these. And he said it's been a really positive experience, and there's not a lot of positive male vulnerable imagery out there. A lot of conversations when it comes to body image and power issues really revolve around females and really sort of criminalize men. And I've been very aware of that since I started this series, that I think sometimes our society doesn't know how to talk about certain issues when it comes to men, that we only know how to frame it in a female way. And I think that's been largely unfair to boys and men to almost not treat them as complex. And so it's been a strange thing to put out there, and sometimes people don't know what to do with it.
I didn't really consider that. Yeah, you're right. Is that there isn't a lot of women are usually put into this position where they express their emotions and they're vulnerable, and there's these. Herb Ritz is the only one that comes to mind in Mapplethorpe, but they did. It was. I don't profess to know, deeply about Herb Ritz. He was a contemporary in the 80s. When I was in school, a lot of his nudes were very big commercially, right? So I saw a lot of his work in a commercial context, but I know that he had a lot of feeling in these, like there was some groundbreaking. I don't feel that I'm qualified to. I haven't looked at it in a really long time, and Mapplethorpe, he broke a lot of boundaries just with men, and men are allowed to love each other. It's okay, right? And it was, but it's such a different context, because it's really, they feel therapeutic and healing and honoring, and there's a lot of different, they're very layered, I guess, is where I feel them and I get them. And then when I really think about that, there's a lot of levels that they take me to.
Well, there's also, when you say when they feel therapeutic and healing, they are while we make them, but we also take them in a way where they feed us later, where if we're in hard spots in life, I've made a promise to myself that I will photograph things in a way that are truthful, because I think the truth matters. And so if life's harder later, we can take out these pictures and they mean something to us, because the way we photographed them meant something so much at the time that they will mean something later to us also. Oh. I think that's very important to always tell the truth when you photograph something, because when you can't see through the lies later of life with the doubts and things like that, that they're just really great reminders to look at something and be like, no, that's true. Like, that's right. That's how we do it here. For lack of a better way to explain it, they've been really positive in that way also.
Well, I'm going to kind of move into a couple of final things here, which are longer things, but nonetheless, I wondered, because a lot of this started out with what does the everyday day-to-day look like? So what does yours look like? What does your every average day look like?
Oh, it's boring. I wake up. And a lot of my day is childcare. It's just me and the kids for 2/3 of the time. My husband, he travels for a living, so it's just me, and so much of my schedule is everybody else's schedule. But I wake up and, I take care of the kids. I print work. I have this second Etsy shop where I sell public domain works of art and stuff. And so I print my orders off in the morning. I try to do things like meditate and exercise. It doesn't happen so much. I do a lot of practical things with photography, uploading, and editing. And I'm finding, especially now in Colorado, the funner things, the adventures, are few and far between. I really have to plan them and schedule them. And when the time comes, even if I'm tired, I have to get up and go, and I have to do it because I won't have another chance for a while.
Because it takes a while to get to some of the places you want to see, yeah?
It does. In fact, tomorrow we're thinking about going out to some waterfalls, and it will require us today. What I'll be doing is I'll be going to the store and getting food that we can pack, so we have all of our food ready, and getting the kids some cold weather clothes because it might be cold up there. And then we will wake up early. I'm going to see if I can convince everyone to get up at 5 a.m., and we will drive 3 hours to try to beat the traffic on the trail, because everywhere in Colorado is very high trafficked with people. And then we will hike for, I'm assuming, about an hour and get to our location and shoot for a little bit, and then we'll drive the 3 hours back home. So it's kind of a big production. Yeah. And, even with that, you don't know, maybe the light won't be good, or maybe there'll be too many tourists in the way. And so there's definitely a big amount of effort to go and
So it's not just, oh, gee, I think I'll take this afternoon and go up here. And there is a planning and then a follow through.
Yeah, I get on, yesterday I was on Instagram, and I'm looking on Instagram to, hashtagging different locations, being like, okay, is there snow in this place? Are there a lot of people in this place? So I can get on Instagram and be like, okay, this is what this lake looked like one day ago, and there was ice on it. Or this is how much water is coming out of this waterfall. And so I'm very specific about how I research places. Because I move so much, I'm not familiar with a lot of these places.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike when I go home to Oregon, I know kind of what to expect. But here, everything's new. I don't know the weather here. I don't know the wildlife here. And so I do a fair amount of research before we go anywhere.
Within all this, when you look for these places, I guess it goes back to maybe what you've talked about through the whole thing with still lives, with even the work with your husband, with the work that you've done, self-portraits. You have a little bit of a sketch in mind, but some of it is seeing. I mean, now with the experience you have, I think it probably pulls together it seems pretty clear on, oh yes, this is my place and this is what I'm going to do here. But getting to that point this looks like a possibility. So I'm going to take this and this and this, and I'm going to plan, and we're going to go here. And then when you get there, it may shift, adjust. It may be something completely different, or you may just go, yeah, no, this isn't going to work for me. Let's go on up over here. Like, I'm just talking like how my sense of things is for you.
No, this is totally how it is. In fact, that seaweed shot that you mentioned, where my husband was under the seaweed and coming out, we were actually at that beach. Our structure was arrive there right before sunrise, so it would still be dark, because there was a sea cave, and we were going to light up the sea cave, and there was going to be no person involved. It was just a landscape shot. So we were there for a specific reason. It had to be low tide, otherwise we couldn't reach the cave. So we had made all these plans, and it turned out we didn't have a powerful enough light to light the cave. And so it was a total failure. And our plan B on the way back was, look at this seaweed. It's low tide. There's this seaweed. What can we do? Because we are not going to make this morning a loss, because we just got out of bed very, very early and made it out. And so he was like, if you want, I can get under that seaweed. It was really cold, really cold. And I'm like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, I mean, we're already down here. You've got your camera ready. Let's do this. And so that's how a lot of our shoots go. And as time has progressed, I make sure to bring things along. So tomorrow we're going to a waterfall, hopefully. And I will probably shoot stock photos of my kids being out in nature, because there's going to be other people around, so there's not a lot I can do. But I will also bring along probably a plain black dress in case there's an incredible landscape situation that I could insert a person into, and I could do a fine art shot. And so I try to bring along things where there could be a variety of photo shoots if the opportunity presents itself.
Smart. It's efficient. However, if you're making all of that to get there, yeah, you'd be crazy not to have the things that you need, knowing that anything you bring, you have to carry. So it's a matter of being efficient.
Yeah, and having kids, I think, makes you efficient, because you have less chances to do things. When I was younger, I could just be more flippant about things. But with my kids, like, we have to make the time work, because all my other time is going into taking care of them. And it's really putting that time crunch on things is really forcing me to be more efficient. I think everyone has a time, kids or not, I think everyone has a time crunch, actually. I don't mean to make that sound like just people with kids.
No. Well, how do you stay organized and current and focused without being overwhelmed?
It's always a struggle, but I keep lists, and I cross off. I put everything on my list, even little things, because the act of crossing something off makes you feel like you're going forward, like you're not just drowning in things to do. And so that's been an important thing. And I try to block my time by projects. So I might work on editing for 2 days, and then I might work on updating my Etsy shop for another 2 days. So I don't try to do everything in one day. I try to block it out.
Oh, so you actually work, I do that. I don't like flip between, I can't edit a little bit and then go in and work on this person's book and then come over here and go do this. I'm going to finish this one out, right? It's because it's a certain part of my brain that I have to use, let's say, for exporting out and setting up galleries for client galleries on a proofing in a proofing gallery. Yeah. That is a very specific, it's exporting to Lightroom, it's importing to Pixieset. It's more like administrative, right? It's not creative. And then the times that I need to select images and just do edits, that's all I'll do. I don't even process then. I just edit. I just pick. And then I'll go on to another gallery that's been selected, make sure that the ones I have are actually the final ones I want to process through. And then I may go on and process them and just finish off with that for a period. But that tends to be like, I can't go from one thing over here, like an administrative thing, to a creative thing, back to a book laying out is very different. Then it's a little bit of both, right? So I do the same thing. I try to focus in on these things.
That sense of
go ahead.
I was going to say that sense of completion has been very beneficial to me moving forward. As I said, it's also part of the reason I blog. When you finish a series of work and you put it on your blog, it gives you that sense of completion. Like, okay, that's done. Now you work to the next set of pictures. Yes,
your blogging is, I think I have them bookmarked. I've referenced them just from you did, and we'll put a link to it, just your whole print comparison. You did something I've always wanted to do that I've never gotten around to do, that I've actually believe I finally did it. I finally compared Miller's True Black and White to Richard's Black and White and got to see things comparatively speaking. I think any more going forward, I'm going to do that. I'll always take off whenever I'm ordering prints, take a few others and then compare it to a few others so that I can, it's so much easier to see when you have them side by side, and then you get to know different images might be better over here than over here, which is all kind of irrelevant for you because you self-print now, which I admire. It's like a whole other little area.
I should have seen it coming. Like once I started comparing prints, I should have just seen it coming that the printer was going to be my final.
Yeah. That's like the end all be all, because that really is there's nothing like a self-printed print.
Yeah, and that it's been neat for me to experience. When I had originally purchased a printer, I had anticipated that I would still be making work very regularly, and I had not anticipated going into a deep Colorado depression. And so that caught me a little off guard. All of a sudden I had this printer, I had my setup, I had a workflow, and I had no work. So I didn't see that coming, but I'm glad I have the printer now that I'm starting to produce a little bit of work again.
I'm sure they're spectacular. I think the last thing that there's many more things. I will definitely want to talk with you again because there's like a whole other little component here I didn't even get into because I know we're trying to stay within an hour, knowing that people drift after a certain period of time. But I would like to just end on an inspiring note of, and I think we actually started there, that you have found taking a low and finding a way to put some activities or some other components around it so that you're not caught by surprise. What would you say to people who are struggling or caught up in their head or going through a difficult patch? What would be your suggestion or what's helped you?
For me, it's realizing that it's not forever, that it's not permanent. You will have good ideas again, and not to panic. But I've also found that my low periods very much inform my high periods. And so in my low periods, I tend to be more analytical. Like I don't need to worry about creativity. I need to just worry about more analytical things. I will read books. Oh gosh, what will I do?
No, I like
What
that.
do
I
do?
like that. That's a good way to even
would
sort of
do-
end your lows feed your highs. That's a
They do. And I make larger goals that maybe I can't reach then, but I'm able to map out what I do want for when the feeling and creativity comes. I have that map of where I want to go. So I don't have to figure it out later when the high comes. I know what I want, and when that comes, I'm going to get it. And so it's not a waste. The low periods still have so much value creatively, even if you're not doing creative activities in those.
What a fantastic that's I'm going to end it on that, because that is absolutely it's encouraging. It actually makes them like have some value.
Yeah, it's nothing's a loss. There's so much during the low periods that come to fruition later.
Well, my friend, we will talk again, because this was spectacular, and I can't wait to see where you go, what you do. I see your work really timeless, like the relevancy in 50 years, 100 years. I think Taishi said one time that she felt she was getting to know someone who was going to be a mark in history, and I sometimes feel that way as well. You just
Kind of you.
It's not kind. You've got a real innate talent, and
now I feel like I better create something right now.
No pressure, because your things are just there's just images here that are just beautiful. So I wish you well tomorrow, and we will talk again. Thank you so much.
Definitely. So much.
Okay, bye-bye.
This has been another episode of My Life Creative with Richard Zombeck and Pamela Joy. You can find us online at mylifecreative.com, where you'll find more information about us, our guests, and while you're there, please consider supporting the show to help us produce more content like this.
Oh yeah, can you feel it? Just over the credits, just riffing now. Words and chords. Not the poetry and the real thing, but not bad for an ad-lib. Not good, but... And it's not long enough, so just do a little bit more. And that's nearly done. That's the final credit. That's the end. 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 Final credit. That's the end.